Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a New Hampshire Business Review webinar. I am Ernesto Burden, the publisher of New Hampshire Business Review, and it is my pleasure to be back here with you today to talk about how New Hampshire businesses can navigate shifting AI regulations. And boy, are they shifting a lot from federal, international, and state levels, sometimes in conflict with each other. And so this will be a fascinating discussion with somebody you know well. The discussion is sponsored by McLane Middleton, and we will be leveraging the deep insights of Cam Shilling, Director and Chair of Cybersecurity and Privacy Practice at McLane Middleton. So Cam, welcome. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just open it up to you. The format to today's webinar is really Cam's going to talk to us without slides, give us some insight into what's happening right now. But really what we're hoping is that you will ask a lot of questions. So this is truly a Q&A oriented webinar. We're going to have a great conversation. And with that, Cam, I'll turn it over to you, but I'll hang around so I can ask questions as we go along.
Yes, exactly. All right. Thanks, Ernesto. And welcome, everyone. So, for those of you who have seen me present before on AI, I usually start talking about how businesses are using AI, how we're seeing it come at us, and therefore the strategies for businesses to implement it in ways that are based on sound legal, technological, and business principles. We will get there. But we wanted to do, Ernesto and I want to do this a little differently this time. I want to actually start with the regulations because there's been a lot of popular press about what's happening with respect to the regulations, and particularly the executive order that's been issued by the Trump administration. AI is a very emerging technology field. 3 years ago, we were not talking about how to implement it in business or the regulations, but now we definitely are. And the reason that we are talking about the regulatory environment is because the European Union adopted a law last year called the EU AI Act. And this is a really comprehensive, good bill based on sound privacy principles, sound cybersecurity principles, sound technology principles. And all of us in the industry thought we had a real baseline. And truth is, we do. But then other things have happened that have thrown some of the regulatory environment into question. So the states are starting to adopt regulations. Colorado has a broad-based AI law. Other states have tried to adopt broad-based AI laws. It didn't work last session or the last two sessions, mostly because I don't think state legislators were ready to grapple with this issue yet. There wasn't enough learned knowledge about how to regulate in the AI space. And so instead, we got smaller AI laws. So, for instance, use of AI to analyze biometrics, or use of AI in the human resources space. And we still are getting those, including in New Hampshire and Massachusetts and other New England states. But then what really threw a curveball into the whole industry is the executive order that was issued by the Trump administration. And if you remember, in the One Big Beautiful Bill, there was a provision that would have said to states, you can't legislate about AI. And actually, the provision would have overturned existing state AI regulations. So the attempt was to make it the overt attempt was to allow it to be regulated by the federal legislature. Whether or not that would have happened is a different story. But that was the intent of the One Big Beautiful Bill provision. It didn't. That provision got taken out. It got stripped out in the Senate. So since that did not get enacted, what happened was we had the executive order. And I'm going to summarize this, and then I'll let Ernesto jump in with a question as to where we go next. The executive order essentially says a couple of things. One is, if states enact AI legislation, the federal government will consider taking money away from the states. So there's a carrot and stick approach. The other thing that the federal legislation does is it establishes a task force to look at states' look at state laws and decide whether or not the state laws are inconsistent with federal policy, and if so, take action. So right now I'm going to pause. Ernesto, are you getting a lot of background noise in my environment?
I am
No.
not.
Okay,
I
good.
cannot
All right.
hear your probably AI-driven noise filtering sensors are doing a great job.
All right, good. Well, I got to get an AI system that makes me younger and more handsome next. So glad that the sound is working at least. All right, so that's the kind of high level summary.
Well, two quick questions that even come out of the high level summary before we move on to the next topic. One is within that executive order, were there carve outs? I think I remember seeing at least some carve outs for things that states could regulate around safety of minors and things like
Correct.
that.
Yep. So there are carve outs for children's safety, online safety, and state and local government stuff, and law enforcement. It's very, very specific carve outs. And so, the carve-outs are kind of designed to accommodate the state laws um, that are in existence, particularly in red states. Some of the other laws that we talk about, some of the other state laws like regulating the use of AI with respect to biometrics, those are coming out of more blue states like Illinois.
Well, and you had mentioned that was my second question, and you teed it up perfectly, which was this having some regulation around AI at a state level doesn't fall neatly across red or blue state categories. It's not like red states have said, we're not touching this at all, because Texas did something, didn't they?
Absolutely. Um, this is a political issue, but you cannot predict what the outcome is going to be based on politics for two reasons. One is there are truly, left and right, red and blue issues with AI. For instance, a lot of truly red interests have to do with whether or not AI is going to be used to filter speech, particularly online, particularly in social media. Um, so there are definitely political issues that are going to get legislated. And blue issues have to do with the use of AI in a way that might be discriminatory in hiring or admissions processes and stuff like that. But also, the reason why you're getting AI legislation from that sometimes can be either not red or blue or even bipartisan is because it's not a bad idea. So the middle, when you talk about kind of the political middle, and we in New Hampshire have a lot of that. We're more of a purple state than a red or a blue state. When you talk about the middle, you talk about people who want legislation that helps businesses work and do business. And that is what a good AI law would do. And so in Texas, for instance, there is a middle that enacted a law that is designed to help businesses set a structure around using AI. And I know that's what we're going to talk about, but that's, in my view, where I hope we get some legislative action.
That makes a lot of sense. And of course, that needing on a practical level to know what to do next sort of does transcend politics, and you need to know what the next right thing to do is. So maybe that brings us into I think the first thing that you were really going to dive into, we have all of these conflicting, sometimes not, uh, state, federal, and even international regulations. How do businesses think about navigating that? And I do want to put that question in the context of a year ago tomorrow. You and I were on this same platform, speaking to a New Hampshire Business Review audience around the topic of how businesses should implement AI. And I think for many businesses, they may still be in those very beginning stages. And I think there have also been a lot of starts and false stops and starts again for AI implementation. So I would say it's probably worth not feeling like you shouldn't go back and sort of realign folks right from the basic principles here too.
Yeah. So there's two things I want to say. One is an overarching concept, and the other one is much more detailed. So first of all, just because we don't have regulations, or just because we have some regulations, or even some of the regulations might conflict, that doesn't mean that businesses can't make a plan. And we've been doing this in the cyber world and in the privacy world for years. There's state regulations about privacy. There's EU regulations. There's other law countries that adopt regulations. Some of them are very consistent. Others have inconsistencies. And for businesses, you make a plan to comply with the highest bar. You really figure out, okay, if all of these laws applied to me, how would I comply with them? And those are very those are strategies that we can create for businesses. Um, and so going to the highest bar is always the solution. By the way, that doesn't mean that you spend more money doing it. It doesn't mean that you have to have more resources to do it. It just means that you implement a system that makes sure that that you've addressed all the rules that could possibly apply to you. With AI, that's not entirely how we're doing it because there aren't a lot of bars in AI. The EU AI Act is really the only one we have to go by. But we are building AI on a system that has been around for years, the cybersecurity system and the privacy system. And so there's about a 50% overlap with principles that apply to AI that also apply in cyber and privacy. And so we can help businesses build a system to implement AI in a way that just makes sense from a legal, technological, and operational standpoint. And it is true there will be regulations coming out at some point in time, but I have a high level of confidence that the systems that we design for businesses are going to take account of those regulations when they come out, because for those of us in the business, I don't think it's going to be a surprise what we see. And when we go through and talk about how businesses can do this, you'll get a sense of the way we believe the regulations are going to come down in this area. All right, you want me to go on to the next point, or
Well, yeah, no, I definitely the next point. But first, two things to sort of poke at here, and then we have a question from the audience that I think it'll be useful to
awesome?
bring in. The first one was you mentioned systems designed for businesses, and I think we saw this in the privacy sphere. And we've talked about that on webinars before. How when all of these tools like Zoom or Teams or any other video calling platform designed in tools to record and transcribe conversations, for example. They didn't immediately design in tools
Mm,
to get consent around being recorded, and that violated wiretapping rules, right? And
right.
so the engineers didn't necessarily know that, but eventually the companies caught up, and now every time you jump on a platform like this, you essentially consent to being recorded, and you have to click a button. And do you see something like that happening with business systems and AI regulations?
Um, yes, maybe. So um, technology is not a great regulator of itself. And so there's going to be no technology solution that necessarily helps businesses do this. Um, but the technology systems that come out will have some of this in mind. So I'll give you an example. Um, so it would be really great if there were some application that we could buy that would tell us how to implement AI in our business, and it would take all the variables into account and all that sort of stuff. But that's the technology that doesn't exist. However, let's look at, say, an application like an HRIS system that has AI built into it. And so let's suppose the HR people are going to use this AI to help them do hiring. And so they're going to feed data into it about who the applicants are and what the job descriptions are and what they're looking for. They may do the interviews on Zoom, have them transcribe all this sort of stuff. So this could be dangerous, right? We're letting AI help us figure out who to hire, and that could hurt people. True, but the HRIS providers that have built AI into the system know this is going to be a problem, and so when they deliver these results, not only is there training of the HR people that are going to do it, but they deliver the results in a way that the HR people can dig. So the HR people, let's say the system says, okay, here are your top three candidates and why. So That solution is not an implementable decision yet. Your HR people need to dig. Okay, tell me why you rated number one as number one. Give me the strongest variables. Give me the sites. Show me what you relied on. Show me the resume. If there were website searches, show me why you concluded that number three was number three. So the technology itself has built-in mechanisms that businesses can use when they implement these systems to mitigate risk. So when I say yes, maybe, what I mean is it's there, but you have to make it work for you as a business to make sure that it is going to work for you.
Yeah, and that seems, I mean, one of the things that was a thread through what you just said was the training of the people who are using it, the review afterwards, the sort of making the human parts of it the sandwich, or the bread on the sandwich, human
Yep.
on either side of the AI.
Yep, that's what we talk about. AI is a human sandwich. You put a human at all points in the process where decisions need to be made. Really, AI is a powerful technology tool, and can do a lot, but it shouldn't be doing anything on its own. For example, the human, in my analogy, the HR example, the human is going to put in the data about the applicants, about the job descriptions, about the requirements. The human is gonna control the prompts for the AI, tell it what to do. The human's going to look at the results. The human's going to research the results. The human's going to challenge the AI. And ultimately, the human's going to make the decision. Now, could it be wrong? Sure. Um, but is a human's use of AI going to be more wrong than a human was before using AI? I don't think so. It could be if a human uses AI and doesn't really control the process, doesn't dig, doesn't do the research, doesn't challenge, and just implements a result without exercising cognition. Yeah, there's going to be mistakes, but that person's going to make a lot of mistakes anyway because they weren't probably exercising cognition without the technology. I don't think that AI aided human decision making is more or less fallible than regular human decision making.
Yeah, as long as the human isn't totally handing over that decision making.
Well, and that's a mistake. That's a human mistake. Um, People say, well, that's an AI mistake. And I guess an AI might have generated a bad outcome, but the human mistake was to rely on the AI result without questioning it. That's a human mistake.
Well, and so we've said the word AI a whole bunch of times, and an audience member has asked, "What's your definition of AI?" It originally meant software that could learn and write code itself. Now it seems to mean any software that can perform a function formerly performed by a human being. How would you define AI?
So, truthfully, you have to look at AI as a spectrum of functions. Um, a year or 2 years ago, we'd have been talking about AI as more like machine learning or applications that have the ability to ingest large volumes of data, to summarize them and analyze them. And that still is a function of AI, a very powerful function of AI. But then AI advanced to be more predictive, and be able to take existing data and give you, either predictions or ideas as to where to go next. Again, still a very powerful function of AI, but now we talk about generative AI, and even the next step will be agentic AI. So generative AI has the ability to take data and, based on a prompt, give you something from it. So everybody, thinks of Chat GPT or Copilot or Gemini or Claude. These are large language models where you can feed a lot of information let's say, Ernesto, you want me to write an article on something, and I want to use AI to do it. I'm going to put in a whole bunch of my other articles so it learns my voice. I'm going to put in data that I want it to learn from to write the article, and then I'm going to give it a prompt, and it's going to generate something for me, create something new. That is also AI. Agentic AI, and then I'll circle back around and actually answer the question. Agentic AI has the ability to operate without prompts, and that can be a little scary for some people. It's not necessarily going to be implemented in a lot of different situations because human control is such a important factor here. But that's the next version. All of these are artificial intelligence. Um, none of them replace humans in it. Some of them may do human tasks. Um, the other thing I'll say is that AI shouldn't be replacing what humans do better, but it should be replacing what AI does better than humans. And decision making, judgment, emotion, interpersonal relationships, these are not things that AI does. Whereas analyze, summarize, extract, predict, create even are things that AI is going to do. So to answer the question, I'm sorry, it's more of a spectrum than a thing. Um, so tough
Is
answer.
it is do you think at the heart of that spectrum is learning itself? Like its ability. I think about like AI driven tools in your phone to recognize who pictures are of. And it's because they've looked at enough pictures and sort of acquired an understanding that when I type David Burden into my phone, my eldest son's pictures all show up in my, you know, search
It
results.
it depends on what you mean by learning. It isn't learning in the traditional sense that we understand it, um, because all AI is something generated by a massive amount of data. Um, and so when you put data into an AI engine, it isn't learning it, it's just ingesting it. Um, if it looks a little bit like learning, because you could say to it, help me write an essay that I want to use for to apply for a college. And then you give it some more materials and say incorporate these materials, and it does. And then you say reformat it this to be 100 to 1,200 words, and then focus on. It looks like it's learning. It isn't learning. It's just using a massive amount of data in conjunction with the direction it's getting from a human to do something. It's the human that's learning. Um,
I'll resist the desire to go down a philosophical
philosophical
road
path.
there and ask whether we're sure that humans are learning or aren't sort of doing the same thing in a sort of meat-based way.
I think we should go down this path. Look, one of the I talk with my kids a lot about this. I have 20 something year old kids, and my daughter particularly is very wary. And she worries, as a lot of people do, that AI is going to ruin people's ability to learn. We do a lot of work with schools, and one of the things that schools are grappling with now is how to teach using AI and how to teach to use AI. Um, there's no doubt that there is a danger that when kids use AI to generate things, they are not exercising the same cognition that a kid would have 3 years ago who didn't use AI, but they are still exercising cognition. The trick is going to be how to teach children how to learn, write, do math, design things, do artwork, play an instrument, implementing the technology to help them do so. Um, and so, schools are going to be responsible for this. I don't have the answer. I don't know exactly how it's going to work. I have some kind of sketches, but the next generation of kids that come out of school their learning is going to be based on empowering this technology to help them do things in life. And if you think about it, like let's think about like an engineer that comes out. They do 4 years in college, maybe a 2 years master's program. Maybe they've got 6 years of training, all with AI engines, and you're going to put them, in line to help you design your next car. Um, they need to be able to use the AutoCAD programs and the design programs in a way where they're leveraging the AI and inputting data and using prompts and challenging the AI to create that part. The this this new person, they haven't not learned. They're not less smart. They're not going to necessarily design a more faulty part. They're just going to do it in an entirely different way than a person did it that didn't come through this. And in all likelihood, they're going to do it faster. They might do it better. They might do it in a way where it's way more integrated with your cost structure, so it's less costly. They might do it in a way that's much more integrated with your manufacturing process so that the part they design takes less retrofitting. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to happen, but I know that effective use of this technology is not going to make people less smart, and it's not going to make our businesses less efficient. It's going to do the opposite, just not exactly sure how yet.
Yes, does seem like the key word there is effective use of the technology as opposed to offloading core fundamental thinking functions onto it.
Yeah.
I think about the process of writing a humble essay. The essay itself as a final product is not the point for a student. It's the thinking that's provoked by the act of writing the essay. So offloading essay writing to AI, for example, not useful. But
It certainly may not be useful in some ways. We'll see. I think smart teachers are going to figure out how to make this technology work. I mean, if you think about the internet, when the internet came out, I think people worried, oh, we're going to lose dictionaries and we're going to lose people's inquisitive minds. And, people are going to stop thinking and they're just going to rely on whatever the internet says. And sometimes people do. But also, it's been this amazingly powerful tool of information distribution. And so, I don't think any of us can imagine now living a life where we can't pull our phone out of our pocket and Google something and have the answer. Um, I don't think it's made us less inquisitive people. I certainly think it's made our lives more hectic, and that to me is the real philosophical question. How's AI going to make our lives not less hectic, not more hectic? Um, but at any rate, I totally lost my train of thought. So, well,
well,
let's go back.
let me bring us back to some of the more practical business from philosophy back into the heart of the business questions here, and one of them is you had mentioned go to the highest bar from a regulations perspective, and for those business people out there listening, they may have had the same sort of queasy feeling that I would have trying to think about going to the highest bar. How do you avoid paralysis going to that highest bar? And I'll give you an example like that you're really familiar with when GDPR rolled out
Mm,
as a European privacy regulation that really had sweeping implications for websites across the world. If you had website visitors who were from Europe, those would have been very difficult to comply with 100% as a small business, with a no web team and so forth.
yeah.
And I think this, AI regulation highest bar might be the same thing. How do businesses think about that?
Yeah. And when I say highest bar, I might have to find a new term for that, Ernesto, because in the world of cyber and privacy and AI, perfection is not the standard. The standards that we go by in these three areas is assess risk and mitigate it. There are certainly some rules, but that's a lot of what it's about. So, for instance, I'll give you kind of the framework of how you, as a business, adopt AI. So, the first step is you're going to put together a governance team, a group of business individuals that are actually going to be in charge of making decisions with respect to AI, like which AI products are you going to test? How are you going to test them? How are you going to prototype them? Which employees are going to be involved? And the idea of this governance team is to think about the issue, not to make perfect decisions. You might make a decision where, you get the wrong AI product, or you spend a lot of money, or maybe you make a decision that where you've fed information to a system that isn't confidential, and that's a mistake. But the point here is you put together a team that's going to think about it. Then you adopt a policy, an AI use policy. And this is where, a good lawyer, a good tech lawyer can come in and help you set some rules up. And there are some basic rules that are not hard. Like if you're going to use AI, you need to license it because you need to make sure that the data is confidential. You surround it with your cybersecurity controls so that you don't have threats of intrusion. You train employees how to use it. You teach them how to use it. You put it in a test environment with safe data. Like none of these are rocket science principles. But this is what I'm talking about. That you're going to go to the highest bar of having a governance committee, putting in an AI policy, training people, prototyping. Um, so this is what I'm talking about with respect to kind of the highest bar. These are not unattainable principles, but maybe I want to juxtapose this to the lowest bar, which would be the wrong way to do this, turning it on. and no guardrails. And truthfully, I think when a lot of people like they look at the executive order or they think about AI, they think, well, we should have no rules. Regulations are bad. That's just going to squelch people. And that's no, that's not right. Um, Turning on an AI system and just letting people play with it, you're going to end up with accidents, bad accidents. Whereas, thinking about it and putting in guardrails allows you to avoid mistakes. And will you get all the guardrails right? No. Like I can predict on, probably what 90% of the guardrails are going to be. It's definitely going to be a governance committee, AI policy, training, cybersecurity around it. Things like transparency is absolutely going to be in there. So, we're incorporating AI language into privacy policies and into vendor contracts and customer contracts and stuff like that. So you don't necessarily know what all the regulations are going to be coming down the line, but you probably get about 90% of them right. And when I say go to the highest bar, that's what I mean. Just start putting in these safety mechanisms so that you have them in place later on down the line when some governmental organization does tell you what the rules are.
And we had a comment related to that from one of the attendees who notes that one of the challenges for businesses will be to train supervisors who don't have the advanced AI training to coach newer employees who do.
I think it's going to be the reverse. I think it's going to be the newer employees that are training the supervisors. Look, AI is fast, it's malleable, it's attractive to some younger people, it's attractive to some older people. I I think it's going to get implemented quickly and used by people who are interested in using it, and those are the people who are going to train the others. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you want to implement AI in a design engineering firm, and so you're going to turn it on for some people for AutoCAD. They're the ones that are going to test it. They're the eager ones. They're the ones that are going to start building momentum. You'll find a client to prototype it. Again, somebody who may want to use it and build enthusiasm. And so you start getting like 20% or 30% of your workforce using it. And then you start opening it up for fuller production. You're going to find some people who are resistant. They're fearful. They don't like technology. They're worried about the confidentiality of it. They're worried it's going to replace them or take their job away. But those people who you started off with, those are your trainers. Those are the ones that build momentum. Those are the ones that build excitement. And you can slowly start dissipating some of the fears that people have about it as you go along. So I don't think this is going to be a traditional training model. I think it's going to be a very atraditional or atypical training model.
Okay. What are some of the specific regulations right now that businesses should be most aware of as they're setting up these taking these steps, setting up the governance team? What should that governance team be aware of?
Yeah, so there aren't a ton of regulations. I'll give you a few examples though. So there's already existing regulation around automated decision making. Privacy laws have rules about automated decision making. If you're going to do automated decision making, you need to get people's consent and you need to do a risk assessment. Um, and this is just one example of kind of one of these safeguards that we build into the process, not just with respect to automated decision making, because there's lots of other kind of somewhat risky uses of AI. But so automated decision making is one regulation that absolutely exists in the United States. Um, Another one is feeding sensitive information into technology. And this is not just an AI thing, but a technology thing. So cybersecurity laws tell us that we have specific responsibilities with respect to sensitive types of information. And this can be these days, this can be a wide variety of stuff. It's not just, race, national origin, sexual orientation, all the kind of protected classifications, but it's also health information, biometrics information, geolocation. And this types of stuff tends to pervade our business systems. And so if we're going to use a technology to process that, we need to have cybersecurity safeguards in place. So, for example, this leads to you've got to license it so that you own the data, so that the AI model isn't trained on your data. You got to make sure that there's access controls. You got to put your cybersecurity controls in place around the AI engine. You need to monitor for inappropriate use, stuff like that. So cybersecurity regulations will apply to with respect to um, any sensitive information that we use with technology. There are a couple of like small area AI rules, like in New Hampshire, we have a rule against, we have a law that says you can't use AI for deep fakes. It's limited to the political spectrum, but so there are little laws like that too.
You want to dig into something on a very practical level. When you say license it, it seems a spectrum of ways that somebody can be using AI from a free account to a paid account, say in ChatGPT, where you've gone in and said, don't use my data for training, to actually having your own licensed install of a AI piece of software.
Yep.
What are you on that spectrum? What are you talking about when you say license it?
So when I talk about licensing, this is the bundle of rights that I want to have, or I want our clients to have. First of all, your data is confidential. It will not be accessed or used by the developer. It won't be sold by the developer. Remember, we're in a world of big data, and one of the reasons why organizations give you a free version of something is because they want your data. So I need confidentiality, first of all. Secondly, I need non-model training. And where we get into difficulties with confidentiality and non-model training is there's sometimes contractual provisions that talk about anonymizing data or aggregating it. Sometimes it's anonymizing and aggregating. And so you really have to dig into the agreements you sign with a lot of these tech providers to figure out how they're really going to use your data. So when I mean licensing, I mean confidentiality, non-model training. How do I control the environment? Like if we were gonna, so let's take our email systems. When we sign up for Microsoft 365, we of course want to be able to configure and deploy that. This is our email system. And of course, Microsoft gives us that ability. Well, we want the same thing with our AI system. We want to be able to figure out who our users are, what our access credentials are, whether or not we can apply MFA. So we need to have control, IT control over the environment, or at least configurability of the environment. So those are the big three: confidentiality, no model training, and control over the environment. What I will say on this licensing piece is, so we're getting AI in a lot of applications that we have already. ERP systems, CRMs, human resources IS systems, electronic medical records are coming with. Like we're getting this. The good thing is with these types of existing products that we use, the licenses usually are right. So if a hospital is going to use an EMR with an AI dictation and transcription system, they're not going to use the hospital's data to train that. They just already know that they can't do that. And so normally those license terms are good. The ones you got to watch out for are the general purpose. So ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude. Fortunately, all of them are set up with licensing levels where if you buy in at the right level, you can get what you want. You have to buy in and then you have to configure. You actually have to go flip the switches and toggle the toggles to set it up right. So you can get all the general purpose models with the right level of licensing. And then there's like an in-between where it frustrates me as a lawyer that some of these companies, they're selling, a SaaS product with an AI built into it, and they won't agree not to train the model on your data, or they won't agree that your data is confidential. And so it's those in-between things like um, a tutoring tool. I won't use the name of it, but that it's the non-institutional licensed product where you just don't know and you really got to dig into it.
Well, I think that is a sort of an eye-opening and slightly chilling thing to think about, which is we all think about licensing, or I shouldn't say we all, but I think about licensing mostly in large language model situations. And that's easy enough to cover by going in and flipping those switches. But when you think about every single piece of software that your company's onboarding,
Yeah,
potentially having built-in AI tools that don't have that kind of privacy protection. That seems a little bit daunting.
it is. So all I can say is, with our clients, we have to build in a system of inventorying the technology that we use. Sometimes that's done out of the IT group, sometimes it's done out of the business office, but um, when we actually implement like cyber and privacy systems within a business, one mechanism that we install is a person or people that is going to create and manage the inventory of things we buy, particularly technology, and make sure that particularly when we are renewing those licenses, that's the opportunity to negotiate with the vendor, change the terms of the master services agreement or SaaS agreement, implement a data processing or data privacy agreement, that type of stuff. There has to be a person in charge of that. And um, Most businesses, even the ones that have this, still struggle with people that buy stuff or license stuff without telling the person who they should be telling. The best two ways to avoid that are um, put a red flag in your finance system so that anybody who needs money for something, it's got to go through that person to say, hey, are we buying something that this that needs to be controlled? The other way is for businesses to turn off the ability of employees to download things, which is just a good cybersecurity practice anyway, because it avoids malware. But if I can't install an executable file without getting approval from my IT group, that's going to stop me from downloading something that I might click the click wrap license, and all of a sudden, Cam Shilling and the McLane law firm have agreed to something that we never should have agreed to. So those are the kind of the stopgaps for that.
Makes sense. We have a couple of questions here that are interesting, and I'll take the first one, which also feels like a pretty thorny question. I'll see if you have any ideas on this. And that is, how would you regulate what your employees are asking AI, specifically if they're not signed in? How do you mitigate that risk in a workplace because you can't block it on a firewall if you're using the licensed product of the same tool? So ultimately, my question would be, how do you eliminate someone from opening an incognito window, launching a free version, and inputting customer data or company data?
All right, so that is a thorny question. I'm going to try to take it apart. First of all, let's talk about employees just lose. Let's talk about employees asking things to AI that they should not be asking. So first of all, as long as you've licensed the AI product, at least the bad behavior stays within our environment, and that is a good thing. The other thing you can do with a licensed version of AI is have monitor controls. And each business has to decide how much they want to monitor their employees. But AI tools are powerful, and you can configure them, and you can configure the AI tool to give you an alert if somebody's asking about things that person shouldn't be asking about. And you can also configure your licensed AI tools to just be off limits to certain things. And they come this way, by the way. At least some of them do. You probably have heard about the limits that ChatGPT or OpenAI places on ChatGPT with respect to certain topics like suicide. Um, but businesses can get granular with how to configure that, as granular as you feel you need to be. Um, with respect to the kind of incognito role, so to a certain extent, you can block domains on your website. So, for example, if I license ChatGPT and that's what I want my employees to use, I'm going to block Gemini or I'm going to block Claude, so that they have to really work around to try to get there. I'm not sure if incognito mode really works that way. It might, but to some extent, you know, you got to control things by written policy, and people who do the wrong thing um, are going to be punished for it. What I will say is this: if you give your employees the right tools and tools that work for them, they're more likely to use them. So for instance, if you say to your employees, look, we are using Copilot and only Copilot, and this is what you must do, and it doesn't work for your environment, they're going to go out and incognito and use ChatGPT. So as a business, you got to figure out what tools your employees really need to use and then give it to them. And hopefully that reduces the instance of the employee trying to sidestep both, your security controls and your policies and stuff like that. I realize that is not a 100% satisfactory answer.
It's a tough question and an interesting situation too, because the scenario that the listener presented was one of having a licensed version for some employees and potentially maybe not for others, or having some employees not want to engage with the licensed version, perhaps because of the monitoring that you could do anyway. Uh, Certainly interesting challenge, although one that seems like it exists with other web-based tools as well. We have another question, this one related to HR, and I'll read the whole thing. Right now, in HR talent acquisition, many businesses are using AI with their HRIS/ATS, and it indeed helps serve their needs and manages resumes and candidate tracking. But from an applicant candidate perspective, AI is frustrating because it seems designed with the business interest, not the candidate in mind. It is conceivable that these gaps could create discriminatory decisions unintentionally. Further, each employer's HR AI is different, which is very confusing for candidates because some businesses don't want AI generated resumes, some don't care, some get thrown out due to formatting issues, which is a technical issue and not a qualification issue. So the question is, are there companies partnering with workforce development entities to address these and other issues in HR? In New Hampshire, we have NH Works, which is a commission to serve economic interests of the workforce and business. So the AI is wreaking a little bit of havoc in HR, it feels like. And you certainly see candidates complaining about this on LinkedIn all the time.
Yeah. So, you got to kind of take the problem apart. If we're talking about, a company that has a job posted and is seeking, and gets 1,000 applicant resumes, that's one problem. If you're talking about, a company that posts a job and gets 30, and the HR folks are relying solely on AI to screen, that's a different problem. If there is no reason why an HR professional should be using AI to screen 30 resumes. Don't get me wrong, AI should be used. You know, so you've got 30 people. They've got a resume, maybe a writing sample, maybe an interview, blah, blah, blah. So you're going to use AI to aggregate, analyze that data. You're going to query against it. You're going to say, this is the job description. Give me the top 10. Why are these the top 10? Why are the bottom 10, the bottom 10? Like, you're going to use the power of AI to help you make decisions. But in all likelihood, AI is not resulting in bias there, particularly if the human is involved. If you got a job where you're posting 1,000, that's a different thing to solve, because no person is likely to look at 1,000 resumes. But that doesn't mean that as an HR person, you still can't use the AI to help you analyze the data. You can these are powerful tools, so you can say, okay, um, rank these candidates. Give me the criteria that you're using to rank the candidates. Um, Put them in categories. Candidates that fulfill all of the criteria, candidates that fulfill 90% of the criteria, candidates that fulfill 80% of the criteria. You can start breaking it down. And by virtue of like actually exercising the human aspect of this, the HR professional will find where the gaps are. You will find, as an HR person, you will find that person who meets 80%, but you still want to interview them. Now, does this mean that you're going to catch everyone? Is there somebody who meets 30% of the criteria, but you should interview them, but you miss them? Yeah, that's going to happen. I think it happened before, by the way, even without AI. But this is not a perfect world. And to applicants, I say this to my kids all the time, and my daughter tells me I'm wrong all the time. Look, we live in a human world. You have to get around the technology. If you want the job, you have to figure out a way to assert yourself. If your resume is not suited to the job, you better change it to make it suited to the job. I mean, part of this is on the applicants too. Certainly part of this is on the human resources people to make the technology work. And then the other part is on the applicants to also make the technology work.
Interesting. It is, I think, one of the other pieces of that question that they asked was, you mentioned the tailoring of resumes, and they had mentioned that you could use AI to rewrite your resume for every different job, but does that AI written resume, even if it doesn't contain untruths, flag AI detectors, which would be a funny recursive kind of loop if an AI system were flagging AI written content and rejecting it as a result of being AI written, but
Yeah. So, if you have an HRIS system and you're using it to flag and then discard anything that's written by AI, you probably are using it inappropriately. I mean, you certainly may want to try to use a system to try to flag AI written materials, but it's probably more like writing samples, and the like. Um, if somebody gets in the door because they have an AI written resume, um, you got to interview them. You're going to interview everyone before. You're going to have opportunities to screen that person out. Um, and also remember, so just because AI writes something doesn't mean the person isn't responsible for it. Anybody who has actually used AI to write well written stuff knows that the person has to do the work. So, if I were to write a 2,000 word article for the New Hampshire Business Review or something like that, um, okay, I'm going to start with source material. I'm going to start with my writing. I'm probably writing a prompt that's a good 300 to 500 words, and it's giving me something. I might ask it to research, go out and find me stuff. I'm going to look at the sources. I'm then going to direct the AI as to how to incorporate those sources. By the time I'm 10 versions in, I'm not sure that that is AI written as much as AI aided me writing it just in a different way than I did before. So remember, when someone has an AI resume, assuming they're not lying, there's nothing wrong with a resume. Um, you may have to dig in to see if they have writing skills, and oral skills, and if that matters, then you're going to have to figure out how to find out whether that person has the skills. But just because something is written by AI doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad.
that makes me think of a historical analog, which would be like the great figures from history that wrote these beautiful letters by dictating them to secretaries who were excellent writers. And the core content, of course, came from Churchill himself in his bathtub with his whiskey, but the secretary cleaned it up,
Yeah,
made it.
it had Churchill's name on it, but and should maybe had her name on it too. Like
And
try writing. Any of you who are questioning, try writing something with AI that you want to be really good. And you will see that it's not just about sticking a prompt in and taking what you get out. That's not the way it works.
some sort of rapid fire questions as we get near the end. Again, going back to the super practical. Inside an organization, you mentioned they should have the governing body. Who should own that? Is that legal? Is it IT? Is it HR? Who's the best person to draw the leadership for that group from, or which department is more
Oh,
likely?
all of the above. So you absolutely are going to have the business leader involved in the committee. Whether she or he runs it is a different story. You might have a legal person, you might have an IT person, you might have a marketing person, you might have three people who are in charge of it. What you really want is the people with an interest and the energy and the insight into the business. I don't think those people come from any one core area in this scenario. They can come from a lot of areas. I will tell you this: IT is usually not where they come from. Don't get me wrong, IT people are important, but this is a business. Like AI is going to be used for business purposes. You want your enthusiastic people to be the ones that know a lot about your business and a lot about how they want to use that technology. Sometimes that's the IT person. People, IT people can be very integrated in business, and other times it's not.
Okay. Is there a policy that a company should already have in writing, even if they're early on?
Yes. Write me and I will send you one. But this is so we can all have a policy and it can all say the right things and look good and sound good. The magic is not in the policy. The magic is in the policy means something. So if you have a policy that says we will have a governance committee, they will decide on these issues. They will decide what AI gets adopted. We will test before we implement. We will have access control. You know, that's a really great policy. But if you're not doing it, it doesn't mean anything. And also, the work is what to get to the policy is what is valuable here. Like the reason we train people is not so we can check the box and say we trained them. The reason we train people is because we want them to learn. We want to teach them. We want them to know how to use this well. So, if you have a policy that says we'll train people, but your training doesn't achieve that objective, the policy doesn't mean anything. But yes, you should absolutely have a policy. And a lot of times we work to the policy. Like, okay, we'll put a policy in place. We know we're not perfect, but this is, and then we make a commitment to work to it. You actually make the policy mean something.
Okay, I've got maybe we can get to both of these questions in 3 minutes. We'll
Okay,
give
I'll
it a
be I'll
shot.
be brief.
First, what are the risks for creating your own in-house AI where it is tied back to a company intranet or Google Suite for your employees to navigate questions or policies in-house?
Love that. Hi. So this is what Copilot is great at if you're a Microsoft shop, but you can do this in any AI application. The reason why ChatGPT is called GPT is because you create these things called GPTs, so you can customize how this works. These are all great systems that you can build them on a data, and so these systems, and particularly like GPTs, can be designed in silos. So, okay, you want to create a GPT that has to do with all of your benefits paperwork. You use ChatGPT or one of these other products. You create this business process flow. You load the data in, and you tell it always can constrict your answers to this thing. You configure it so an employee has to have a network logon credential to use this, and it's fantastic. It's beautiful. In fact, it's a great way to implement AI in a relatively non-dangerous way, right? Because it's all inside of a system. You're testing it. You get, that's a great idea. I love that. I'm going to steal that.
So, last one. Companies are going to have to set some standards for themselves. Looser rules may allow some companies to go faster with more risks, others will go slower and safer. Can you share your view on humanness is going to be a unique selling point for people and companies as AI develops more? I feel like that will be a thing and one I lean into despite being a heavy AI user, being an LP in a streaming world. So,
LP, limited partner, or
long playing record, I think, is what they're saying.
got it.
The
Sorry.
analogy is we're th those of us who are I love that question. It's how important do you think the human factor is going to be as AI becomes more prevalent in all functions?
Massively. So first of all, I want to address the fast versus slow. Um, the process, whether you're a fast AI adopter or a slow AI adopter, it's going to be fast. A fast AI adopter is going to get things in place in 2 months. A slow AI adopter is going to get them in place in 18 months. But either way, it's fast. We got to go fast. This space is moving fast. And so you have to set up guardrails, and not every business's guardrails are going to be the same. Some businesses might say, look, we're going to license ChatGPT and we're going to put it in a contained environment. We're going to train employees how to use it. We're going to give them some rules and let them go. Other companies, think, hospitals or defense contractors are going to put this thing in a sandbox and, let only certain people use it. Um, so the guardrails are going to differ, but this is what I will say. The way in which a business is going to figure out how to implement this well for itself is going to be based on its employees. So, for instance, if you have a graphic design business and you're one of these fast adopters and you found that AI product that is going to help you with graphic design, you're going to test it quick, you're going to prototype it quick, you're going to get some customers to do it, you're going to train your whole workforce on it. And those people are going to figure out by talking to each other and showing each other how they're using it and all that sort of stuff. Those people are going to figure out how to do it best. It is an absolutely human process. It doesn't work well in silos. The slower movers are going to do it in a different way. They're going to do it with committees and working groups and stuff like that. But it's still going to be a human process. It's not going to be one where IT tests this thing out and then rolls it out. It's just not how it works. So I hope I answered that question. If I haven't said human control or human involvement or human interaction 100 times yet, I'd be surprised.
Well, and I think I definitely that point is taken away. And I think also the questioner's other point, which is that the idea of human to human interaction is going to maybe become even more valued as non-human tools can do a lot more jobs. We're still going to want to talk to you about these topics as opposed to read the CAM GPT. So
I
we'll
don't
bring
have
you
one of
on.
those.
We'll bring you on and hopefully we're talking again before this time next year. But I think that's a good place for us to wrap up. I'm going to just share my screen one more time, and I'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar. And it's sponsored by McLane Middleton, Cam's home base. And Cam, thank you. Thank you to our audience for hanging out for this fascinating and wide-ranging discussion. Cam, always a pleasure. Look forward to talking to you soon. I am Ernesto Burden. I'm the publisher of New Hampshire Business Review. It's been my pleasure to be with you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, folks. Bye.